And now to the interview portion of the pitch clock. We've kicked Chris Cody out. We've moved over to Studio B, and now we test Mike Schur's actual baseball knowledge of modern Major League Baseball. Mike, thank you for lending your expertise here as we approach the MLB All-Star Game tonight on Tuesday. I want to know, through this point of the season, do you have a team in the American League and a team in the National League that has surprised you most in this first half of Major League Baseball?
Yeah, there's a lot of surprising teams, I would say. In the American League, ironically, it's my own favorite team. It's the Red Sox. I predicted the Red Sox would be basically what they were last year, which is like a game under 500. And they're currently sitting in wild card slot number 3 in the American League. They're hitting much better than I think anybody thought they would. They've had a ton of injuries and they're still playing really well. Also, their defense is atrocious. It is truly unpleasant to watch this team play defense. I think they have 10 more errors than any other team in the American League currently. And that doesn't begin to tell the story of how bad they are. They are butchers defensively. And yet they're 11 games over 500 and in contention after ownership did essentially nothing at all in the offseason to help them. So that's been a really pleasant surprise. The other team in the American League that was surprising to me was the Astros because they sucked really badly for the first couple months of the season. And a lot of people wrote their obituary, including me. And now they've just been like annoyingly doing that Astros thing they do, which is like winning and chipping away and winning series and pitching better and hitting better. And Bregman came alive. And now they're right on the Mariners' heels. And as much as I want to think that the Mariners can hold them off and make a run, because it would be really fun to have the Mariners make a World Series run, I think that they're doomed. I think the Astros are going to catch them. And that's a bummer because who wants to see the Astros in the playoffs again?
Especially when you could have a Mariners run. I mean, they're one of the more fun teams in baseball to watch.
Yeah, Mariners have a bunch of fun players, and they've never won a World Series. They're the Padres of the American League, and I was really thinking maybe this would be the year that the Astros kind of fell apart in this core. Altuve and Bregman and Yordan Alvarez and those guys would just kind of fall apart, and maybe the Mariners could ascend to the AL West throne. But I don't know, man. I mean, those are the good on the good side. Those are the teams, and the Royals who were hanging in, although they look a little shaky recently. On the bad side, I mean, the both World Series teams from last year, the Rangers and the Diamondbacks, just like, oh God, what happened to Corbin Carroll? Like, why is Corbin Carroll gone from legitimate MVP candidate at 22 or whatever he was to barely replacement level player at 23? It's a real bummer. That was a team that seemed like they were, going to be good for a while. And the Rangers, Langford and Carter, who were arguably the best 1-2 hitting dynamic heading into the year of the young guys, except for maybe Rutschman and Henderson in Baltimore, got off to terrible starts, just terrible. Langford has come on recently. Langford is raking, but man, oh man, like Evan Carter seemed like such a sure thing after he exploded in the playoff series last year, and now he's just like kind of nowheresville, and maybe it's just a sophomore slump, and maybe he'll come around again. He's too good a hitter to be this bad. But those are the bummers in the worse than we thought category to me, is the World Series teams from last year.
You always like to think that when a player like Corbin Carroll falls off a cliff this way, that there must be some sort of injury, but it's been so disappointing to see the way that he's performed. But at least for you, when it comes to the Red Sox, who I believe are 17-7 in their last 24 games, you got the Yankees on the other side going 9-19 in their last 28 games. That's got to be really enjoyable for you, Mike Schur. I'll ask you, and it might stick with the American League East here in this question, but Mike, who has been to you not the biggest surprise, but the most entertaining team in baseball to watch this year?
My favorite two teams to watch who aren't the Red Sox are the Orioles and the Phillies. Orioles because they've got so many guys that are 25, call it, and under, who just look like world-beating future Hall of Famers. Like
Right.
that everybody knows about Henderson, who if it weren't for Judge would be a runaway MVP candidate this year. He might still win it. Like he plays a more important position and he's mashing the ball at nearly the same rate that Judge is, although Judge is just ridiculous.
Otherworldly.
But yeah, just so unpleasant. Just so deeply unpleasant that Aaron Judge plays for the Yankees. But Rutschman is every bit as good as everybody thought he would be. They have so many guys, Colton Cowser and Heston Kierstad and all these really young players who are essentially doing what everyone thought they would do when they tanked. Look, they tanked for 8 years or whatever. They did what they ran the process in baseball, and it's paying off. Like they have all these guys who are super young and really, really good, and that makes them super fun to watch. Jordan Westbrook, who's like the 9th most interesting guy of that crop, has 15 homers at the break. Like they have a ton of those guys, and then the Phillies, to me, are just like the most joyous team to watch. Like they have like Bryce Harper was the perfect guy for that team because they have like an extremely Phillies vibe to them. Like they're just like Philly as a city, and that team of dudes is perfectly suited for each other. It's a little bit misleading how good they were in the first half because they had the easiest schedule, I think, in baseball over the first couple months. And I was a little skeptical that they were actually as good as they appeared to be. But they're still playing really well, and the Braves obviously have had catastrophic injury luck with Acuna going down, but also everyone on that team is hitting worse by like 150 OPS points than they did last year. Everyone is down. Olsen is down, and Ozzie Albies is down. They're all weirdly worse, and because of that, the Phillies have an 8.5 game lead. They have the best run differential in baseball, I think, as of yesterday. And they're just kind of sailing right through. And I mean, right now, I would say the betting favorite to come out of the National League, even above the Dodgers. They handled the Dodgers really easily in that series recently, and they just look really great. And nothing would make me happier, except leaving the Red Sox aside, nothing would make me happier than the Phillies actually winning a title with this team because they're so fun to watch.
The Phillies and the Orioles would make up a blast of a World Series to watch.
God, that would be so great.
It would be amazing. And the Orioles, they have all these guys that they've sort of built in a lab that all look like they're in the background of that Paul Ryan picture that he took of the House of Representatives. Like everybody looks exactly the same. Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens has been maybe the story of Major League Baseball. He'll be starting for the National League tonight in the All-Star Game. Pittsburgh Pirates representative. And my favorite stat that I've seen, he now has, I believe in his first 11 starts, he has 2 starts allowing no hits and striking out 11. And I believe Randy Johnson and Max Scherzer combined for 2 of those starts over the span of their careers. How unbelievable is Paul Skeens? Is there even a comparison that you can make to what he's done here at the start of his career?
The comparisons are all phony because the comparisons for a guy doing this at his age with the speed at which he arrived in the majors. I mean, remember, this guy was drafted in July of last year, and in July of this year, he's starting the All-Star game. Like, that's pretty unprecedented. But the comps are all like Fernando Valenzuela or Hideo Nomo or these guys who popped in out of nowhere and set the league on fire, or Mark Fidrich or something. And like none of those are actual comps because it's 40 years ago and the game is completely different. And the speed at which he not only acclimated to major league hitters, but became dominant over those major league hitters, I don't think has a comp. Like you're starting to see these stats about him where it's like it's the Shohei Otani meme where it's like the last time anyone did this was Sloppy Ferguson in 1920 or whatever. And like I think if his elbow holds up, and it might, unlike as a lot of these other guys, because he's a monster. He's a baseball monster. He's 100 feet tall and he weighs 10,000 pounds. And he just doesn't look like he's putting a ton of strain on his elbow, even though he's throwing 100 all the time. Like you're looking at a kind of unprecedented pitcher. And that is something that's interesting to track, I think, in baseball is there appears to be a market inefficiency or that was identified a few years ago. And the market inefficiency is monsters.
Yeah.
In other words, what we need are guys who are the size of NFL tight ends at every position. You see it. I mean, Judges, as I've often said, Aaron Judge is larger than Gronk. He is big. He is taller than Gronk, and he weighs more than Gronk. And the idea that that guy was the guy you wanted to play baseball for you was kind of an odd, when he was drafted and when he was developed by the Yankees, that was kind of a new thing.
Right.
But now you're looking at the Ellie De La Cruzes and the O'Neill Cruzes and the guy Spencer that the Yankees drafted, who's next, and Dominguez, who the Yankees drafted. Like these teams seem to have decided that the answer for how to develop a new kind of talent was to draft guys who are like 6'5", 6'6", and like 260, 270, 280. And it seems to be working. Like these men are tight end size. O'Neill Cruz is 6'7". Like he plays shortstop. If you could go back in time to the days of Honus Wagner or even the days of Cal Ripken, like when Cal Ripken played short,
David Eckstein.
He was 6. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like Cal Ripken was 6'3", and people were like, oh, he can't play shortstop. That's ridiculous. He's obviously a third baseman. And he kind of revolutionized the idea that someone that size could play. And then A-Rod played short, and he was even a little bigger. But now you routinely have these guys playing key positions up the middle who are 6'7". And like O'Neill Cruz is a basketball player. That's how tall Jaylen Brown is. Like that's Jason. That's almost Jason Tatum. Like these guys aren't supposed to be able to play these positions, and yet they are, and they're playing them really well. So I think Skeens is just the latest incarnation of this thing that GMs have identified, which is maybe there is a market inefficiency in getting enormous baseball monsters to play these key positions.
And hopefully that level of physical freak allows him to not go through the injuries we've seen with some of these phenoms before, Steven Strasburg and those of the like before him. Mike, when we talk about the best players in Major League Baseball, the first name that has to come up is Shohei Otani. And this year he's not pitching, so he's just become like the greatest hitter in the world. I believe he has an opportunity to win the Triple Crown. I want to know your thoughts here because he's 10 points behind Christian Yelich in batting average. He's 8 RBI behind Marcell Ozuna, 3 homers ahead of him. Do you believe that Shohei Otani could win the Triple Crown this year? And if so, how nuts would that be considering he just signed this $700 million contract and isn't even pitching yet for the Dodgers?
Yeah, I have a friend who works in a front office in baseball who I was talking to when he had his when it was announced he was having Tommy John surgery, but that he was still going to hit. And this person said, you know, what's annoying is that he's going to get like 20% better as a hitter. And I was like, no, he's not. That's impossible. He did 1,000 OPS last year. He was like, he hit whatever. He had, 45 home runs or whatever. And this person was like, yeah, he's going to get better. Like when he doesn't, people underestimate the degree to which having to focus on pitching takes you away from your hitting time, your hitting practice. And watch, he's going to get better. And it's totally right. Like he's going to set career highs in every category this year as a hitter easily, unless, barring more injury. He's going to have more hits, more doubles, more homers, more RBI, more walks, more everything, more stolen. He already has 23 stolen bases on the year. He's been caught 3 times. His career high in stolen bases is 26. Like he's going to sail past batting average and probably on base percentage and slugging percentage and everything. And the annoying thing for people who don't like the Dodgers is that the one tiny glimmer of hope that you had when they signed him to this insane contract was that he was going to be not pitching this year, which means he wouldn't be as valuable as they're paying him to be. And yet he kind of still is, even though he's DHing, he might still win the MVP as a DH because he's so otherworldly as a hitter. And watching him every day, it feels like one of those guys. He feels like one of those guys, like it was Barry Bonds is the last real comp I can remember, which is every time he comes up, it just looks like he's going to hit a home run. Like it looks like it's impossible to get a pitch by him. So I think we should all just be grateful that it's one of these, like, we're blessed just to watch him play. Like
Yeah.
we're never going to see this again. And next year, in all likelihood, hopefully, he's going to start pitching again, and then we're going to remember, oh yeah, this guy's also one of the best pitchers in the league. It's just it's remarkable. We'll never see this again. I know that a couple guys last night in the draft were drafted who are two-way players, and maybe he's going to open the door for more of these guys, but it's very hard to believe we'll ever see anyone who's this good at both things. I don't think it's humanly possible.
It's why it would be truly, truly hilarious if in the 1 year in which he's not a pitcher, he just, won the Triple Crown. No big deal.
Yeah.
It would be ridiculous. Outside of Paul Skeens and Shohei Otani, who are two of the more celebrated faces in baseball at the moment, Mike, who is the player that you're most looking forward to watching in the All-Star game?
It's Gunar Henderson. I think that, he had so much hype coming into his career. He was, of all of those Orioles prospects, he was the one that I think people were the most hyped about. Maybe Rutschman, but I think he was the name you heard the most. He had a really good rookie year last year, like extremely good rookie year. He had 28 homers. He was worth more than 6 wins to his team. He had an 814 OPS. He was 22 years old, and it was like, wow, this guy's really arrived. And he's better at everything this year than he was last year. Insane. Every single thing he's better. He's better at hitting. He's better at fielding. He has more power. I don't think anyone thought, like he's already matched his home run total from last year. And I don't think anyone thought that he would be this good as a hitter. And because this good is MVP level good.
Right.
And so I'm old enough to remember the glory days of the like mid to late 90s when you had Nomar, Jeter, and A-Rod all at short, and people were like, wow, we'll never see this again. This many guys who were this young, this good at playing shortstop, we have that right now. Like, it's literally happening right now. Gunar Henderson and Mason Wynn and O'Neal Cruz and Ellie Dela Cruz, like these guys are so young and so talented, and I love it when you have when a guy, there's nothing better in baseball than when a guy lives up to the hype and even surpasses the hype. It's just so fun to watch these guys burst onto the scene and just take over. He's completely taken over. He is the thing that makes that Orioles team great. Almost, it's him and Rutschman, because having a catcher that good defensively and that good offensively is such a blessing for any team. Like, there's when your catcher is not a hole in your lineup, but is actually like can hit third or fifth or whatever and really contribute offensively. That's just a very rare thing. But I think Gunar Henderson right now, it seems crazy to say this, the guy's 23 years old, but he is absolutely on a Hall of Fame trajectory after a year and a half in the big leagues. That's such a fun thing to watch. And he's got the sweetest swing, man. His swing is just so perfect.
To be a shortstop and to be that dominant as a hitter is so rare. Maybe Gunar Henderson can lead a new version with all these young shortstops of that old shirtless photo of like Nomar and Jeter and Edgar Renteria, that classic
I remember that photo.
You remember that photo?
That was
That's
insane.
A classic. That's completely
what a
insane.
Weird moment that
totally
was.
Insane time in baseball history to have that happen. But maybe he could do that. The guy I'm most looking forward to watching tonight is Jurickson Profar, just because it's insane that he's an all-star. It doesn't make any sense that he's been so good for the Padres.
This is a great story. This is a truly great story. Because that guy, I think he was the number 1 overall pick, right?
I believe so.
If I remember correctly. And he was certainly like the most hyped prospect in baseball for a long time. That guy has been around for a long time now. His rookie year was 2013. And his WAR totals, here are his WAR totals. I've got him right here for every year of his career. And granted, he was injured a lot. He had some really bad luck with injuries and stuff, but his WAR totals are 0.1, 0, 0, 2, 0, 1.1, 0, 3.1, negative 1.7 for the Rockies, 0.4. And now at age 31, kind of out of nowhere, he's like put it all together.
It's crazy.
He's hitting 305. He's got an 870 OPS. Like, this is an incredible story. This is 10 years or more of this guy being a disappointment, except for 1 year, really, in San Diego. And then suddenly, no, he's great. He's a great player. He's hitting everything. And I read that he spent the entire offseason tinkering with his swing. He was like, I have to rebuild my swing. My swing doesn't work, and I have to rebuild it. And he did. And suddenly his OPS is 200 points higher than it was a couple of years ago in Colorado. Like, that's what a wonderful thing that is for a 31-year-old guy to actually live up to the hype he had when he was a teenager. It's wonderful. That's a good choice by you. I like that.
He was supposed to be Gunar Henderson, then spent 10 years not being Gunar Henderson, and now an all-star at this stage of his career. It's too cool. Mike, the final question of our interview here for you. A couple weeks before the deadline, I know we're celebrating the All-Star Game tonight, but a couple of weeks before the trade deadline, I'm wondering, are there any teams that you look at that you think are competitive, are playoff teams, but you could see them making a move that could then catapult them into actual World Series contention? And if so, what would that move be? Who would you like to see them target?
Well, yeah, there's a lot, obviously. I mean, the Orioles don't really need to do anything, but I think they will, because I think they sense blood in the water. The Yankees have been pretty bad in the last month or two, and the Yankees got off to a super hot start. Everybody was mashing. Volpe was mashing, and Verdugo was mashing, and they've all come back down to earth and are now basically, they seem like the same kind of top-heavy lineup that they were last year, which is to say they've got Judge, they've got Soto, and then they've got a lot of okay guys. And so I think the Orioles sense there is blood in the water. They have a ton of prospects that they can trade that they don't really need. And, I don't know who the pitchers are who are going to be available, but I think the Orioles right now are one really good starting pitcher short of being a real World Series contender. I think they'll do something in the pitching market. I think the Guardians are another. Guardians are very quietly sailing right on through with the best record in the American League.
Yep.
I don't think anyone, including me, really buys them as a World Series team yet. I think they need some help. Then there's the teams like, there's like the Brewers. Like, do the Brewers do something? The Brewers are likely going to win the NL Central, but what are the betting odds for the Brewers to make the World Series right now? Like, I don't think anyone thinks they're better than the Phillies or the Dodgers. I don't think anyone thinks they're honestly better than the Braves, even in the Braves weekend conditions. So I think the contenders, those three contenders, I would imagine will try to do something. The bigger question for me is these marginal teams,
right?
The Twins, the Red Sox, like the Cardinals, the Padres, these like marginal teams, are they buyers or sellers? It's the same question every year. I think I can tell you right now that if the Red Sox became sellers, there would be a rebellion in greater New England, because the ownership did nothing to help this team in the offseason. They announced, the actual phrase they used was, we're going full throttle. And apparently full throttle meant do nothing. Just absolutely stand pat. And against all odds, they're in playoff contention. So I think you're going to see them do something. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of teams that feel like they're in playoff contention, but kind of know that they're not really better than the best teams in the league. I think most of those teams will sense that it's a seller's market and are going to bail and kind of unload a bunch of veterans, because I think that there are a lot of I think the Orioles, the Guardians, potentially the Mets, who were still hanging around, are more desperate to make the playoffs than some of these other mid-market teams, the Royals and the Rangers and the whoever. So I think you're going to see I'm predicting a lot of movement, and I think a lot of movement from the marginal teams to the contenders. I think the contenders are all going to go for it, and I hope that's true, because there's nothing more fun than an exciting trade deadline day. It's like the most fun thing in sports.